Hello, my name is Matthias Cavodia. I'd like to welcome you guys to my channel. Today we're going to talk about Exiles. We're going to cover issues 58 to 61. For those who haven't read Exiles, this was a freaking solid run. I think only the last stretch, they just didn't know what to do with the characters. But at least for the first 80 issues of this series was freaking solid. Like one good story arc after another. They tried a lot of stuff. They experimented with a lot. And these issues that we're going to cover in particular, we're going to cover Exiles having to deal with Tarnadak, then the return of Mr. Creed, and then we're going to really focus on the Exiles going to the Age of Apocalypse, which the Age of Apocalypse, as I mentioned previously on this channel, is my all-time favorite crossover. So without further ado, the first story, as I said before, Exiles having to deal with Tarnadak. I hope I'm pronouncing this villain's names correctly. Tarnadak is like one of these elder demon beasts tied to the lore of Alpha Flight. Basically, he's actually the one that gives Sasquatch his powers. And Sasquatch is like sort of like an avatar to Tarnadak. The thing is, Tarnadak is evil as hell. He actually pops up in this series because they had to deal with Kulan Gath, and he basically takes over Sasquatch's body. This is another version of Sasquatch. I really enjoyed this incarnation of Sasquatch. She had white fur, and when she reverted back to her human form, she was actually an African American woman. That was like sort of a surprise, sort of a cool spin to the character, because obviously Sasquatch, the character, when he reverts back to a human, is a white male. And so the thing is, Tarnadak is not down with this whole thing, jumping to one dimension to another, trying to resolve the problems of each one of these dimensions. Because for those who don't know, sort of the main focus of the series is sort of like Quantum Leap. The Time Broker, or the ones behind the Time Broker, had sort of like broken the timeline, sort of like what's happening now in the Loki series. And the Exiles were sent, or obligated, forced to jump to one dimension to another, fixing these problems. And a lot of times they have to do some pretty ethically and questionable stuff, like they have to take a lot of hard decisions. Tarnadak doesn't want nothing to do with this, and he actually wants to flip the table on the Time Broker and take over the whole thing, take over whatever it is, the Time Broker's base, try to find out, get to the bottom of it, but trying everything in tone of serving Tarnadak's interests, which he probably wants to take over everything. So they reach this reality. Tarnadak basically kidnaps Blink and forces the other members of the Exile to find all the super villains of this dimension to help him find his way to the Timekeeper's base, the Time Broker's base. Obviously, things go terribly wrong because all these villains can't work together. They hate each other's going to say they hate each other's butts. No, guts. Sorry. And Beak actually pulls a fast one on Tarnadak, takes Shaman. He actually goes there in disguise. They're able to defeat him. But the thing is, Heather Hudson, once they save her from Tarnadak, actually loses her capability in turning back into Sasquatch. So she's going to be like the human member of the team, working further down the line. Spoilers, like they're going to find the Time Broker's base and then discover the ones behind the whole situation. She's going to be like the human that's going to be coordinating their missions and stuff like that. Sort of like Madeline Pryor during the Australian X-Men phase. So after this, we cut to another story where you have Sabretooth. He was actually left behind in another reality because I think they had a mission that they had to kill a bunch of mutant kids that they're going to basically break time and space, the whole timeline. Sabretooth stays behind that reality, stops the Time Broker, tells the Time Broker, look, I can fix these kids. I can be a good example for them and help them. And when the Exiles arrive, they discover that Sabretooth basically miserably failed. And so they have to deal with this whole situation because one of those mutants is actually Hyperstorm, the son of Franklin Richards and Rachel Summers, who is insanely powerful. He turns out to be a bad apple. And actually in the story, he makes Blink do some pretty horrible things. So Sabretooth has to deal with the fact that he has to take down a kid that he he was basically a father to. So, and also Mr. Creed also was sort of like the adopted father of Blink. So we have this whole relationship between Sabretooth, Blink. Sabretooth not liking Mimic because Mimic is sort of in love with Blink. So we have that whole situation. But what starts to happen is they start to realize that the Time Broker, because the Exiles have been rebelling over the past couple of missions, so the Time Broker is like sort of angry with them and sort of putting them in ever worse situations or situations they're not down with. So in this particular mission, since they rebelled to such an extent, what the Time Broker does is takes them to the Age of Apocalypse and forces them to have a new teammate that, especially for Mr. Creed and Blink, they're going to really hate, which is Holocaust/Nemesis, a really awesome villain from the Age of Apocalypse. He forces them onto the team. And basically what the Time Broker tells them is what they're going to do is they have to take down Magneto, who's the hero of this reality, old leader, because obviously Blink and Sabretooth were on Magneto's X-Men in the Age of Apocalypse. So they're really, really not happy with this mission. While Holocaust is freaking happy. He's like, yeah, this is my time where I can fix things. Take my father's place, because obviously Holocaust is the son of Apocalypse. Holocaust actually does something pretty intelligent. What he does is he finds the Macron crystal, I'm not sure how you pronounce it. And he understands the nature of what's happening with the Exiles. So obviously we're going to get the confrontation between the Exiles and the X-Men, situation that's forced by the Time Broker. But what actually happens is Holocaust uses his smarts and his cunning, flips the table on the Time Brokers and uses the Macron crystal, to get the Exiles to the Time Broker's brace. And we're going to get in the next story arc, the big reveal of who the Time Brokers are, how the whole situation works, how did they get to the situation where they had to jump to one dimension to another. So it's like it's a really interesting reveal. So before this happens, obviously, we get a pretty cool battle between the Exiles and Magneto's X-Men from the Age of Apocalypse. I love Sunfire's design from the Age of Apocalypse. Obviously, the Exiles don't want to go through this mission, killing off Magneto or any of his X-Men. So again, they tell the Time Broker to shove it up his ass, sorry. They're not going to go through with the mission. Time Broker totally flips out. They use the Macron crystal to pull a fast one on the Time Broker. And I'm going to leave this video here. Again, Exiles, fantastic series. I really loved it. See you guys next time. Bye.